Okay, so now we're going. Hello, everybody. I am Michael Cronin, and I am the IFSW's UN Commissioner for North America, and I lead the team at UN headquarters in New York. Welcome to our presentation panel on social work advocacy at the United Nations in co-building a new eco-social world. And who I have with me today are two graduate social work intern stars, Linda Levin from Fordham University and Milena DiMaggio from Monmouth University. Both may have graduated by the time you see this and have been working with the IFSW representation team in New York for 2 semesters, a full year. So first, I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area and the Jersey coast in the United States, where the original land guardians are the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape tribe lived. The International Federation of Social Workers is the worldwide body for professional social work. It comprises of over 144 social work associations, representing almost 5 million social workers. IFSW has formal consultative status with the United Nations and other global bodies. The Federation and its national members strive for social justice, human rights, and inclusive sustainable social development through the promotion of social work best practice and engagement in international cooperation. The United Nations provides a platform for non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and civil society, which is anyone that's not government, to participate within the international community in promoting social development and social justice based on human rights. Since 1959, IFSW has been granted special consultative status by the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, as well as the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. I'd now like to introduce our New York team at headquarters and note that we are all volunteers, although we may have paying jobs. We are all volunteers in this endeavor. So you see my bright, younger smiling face there as the regional commissioner. Dr. Elaine Congress from Fordham University. She works with indigenous issues, status of women, as well as migration issues. Dr. Robin Mama, who is the dean at Monmouth University in the School of Social Work. She has been our IFSW co-representative for one of our interventions called Social Work Day at the UN for many years, and you'll hear more about that. Ann Deepak, also from Monmouth University, looks at immigrant and refugee issues and status of women, as well as social development. Evelyn Tomaszewski, one of our newer recruits we're so happy to have, who has a long career in policymaking, is leading our efforts in looking at upgrading some of our policy statements, as well as leading us in the UN high-level political forums, which he has extensive experience on. Shanae Osborne was one of our star interns years ago, and she's now on our full-time team as well. And she has a multitude of areas, and I would say one of the many hats that she wears is advocacy for the status of women. And here we have our two bright, shining faces who are going to tell you, the greatest part of this story. Linda Levin from Fordham University and Milena DiMaggio from Monmouth University. Okay. The UN Commission supports IFSW representatives and the IFSW members to act as facilitators in bridging the gaps between community aspirations and the UN agendas. At the same time, the knowledge of the UN work flows back to the IFSW board and the IFSW members with the goal to create a partnership and realizing social change. The North American regional team enjoys strong support from the member organizations of our region, the Canadian Association of Social Workers and the National Association of Social Workers in USA, which serves as a resource for participation in team and UN activities and functions. The overarching objective of IFSW representations to the UN is to represent a social work perspective to the UN and UN agencies, and to work towards joint action based on social work principles. Representatives highlight the social work solutions that can be achieved throughout applying the profession's principles and methodologies as framework for achieving social justice, inclusive participatory democracy, sustainable peaceful societies, social transformation for equality and rights. Representatives are bound by the IFSW Constitution, definition of social work, statement of ethical principles, and the policies of IFSW. The commission and the representation work as part of the wider IFSW body and the work of all representatives link with the previously stated objective, vision, and work agenda of the IFSW UN Commission. Representatives are requested to focus on one or two themes, such as children's rights, health and mental health, social development, status of women, the family, children and youth, indigenous peoples, migration, and this is just to name a few, which are relevant for global social work and coordination within the Commission. Our UN regional representation teams cover specific areas with focal points in several areas. For example, our UN headquarters at New York team covers most of the social and humanitarian agendas, including social development and the status of women and indigenous issues, to name a few. The Geneva team focuses on human rights, where the Human Rights Commission is housed. A Vienna team is charged with following crimes and drugs. And in Nairobi, the team covers human settlements and UN habitat, which is also located at that UN site. Our newest teams are in Bangkok, concerning with the economic and social issues pertaining to the Asia Pacific region. How do we do this? The overarching objective of IFSW representation to the UN is to represent the social work perspective to the UN and UN agencies, just as we said before, so that we can work jointly on action based on social work principles. We try to influence the member states, the UN agencies, staff, those on the ground, to partner with us with using our expertise. We facilitate international and regional cooperation for sharing learning and joint action. One thing during COVID is that we learned, using the Zoom platform and digital platforms, is that our UN Commission teams throughout the globe, the ones that I've mentioned before, have been able to participate things despite where the focal points are. So we've had some of our regional commission representatives from Asia Pacific and Europe participate in things at UN headquarters and vice versa. So we're really looking forward to that continued synergy. Policies, representing IFSW along with the existing policies, papers, and ethical code. We develop ethical statements and policies that enhance social work practice. The UN Commission recently drafted a policy statement on social work and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and are continuing to work on others and revisions. An important task communicating with our IFSW members is to raise awareness of the IFSW members and mark the aims, goals, and work of these UN organizations. Every year, the representatives submit a report describing the work during the year. The report is used for the accreditation of IFSW to the UN, and the reports for the IFSW board that meet annually and biannually in the general meeting. Written statements, which you'll hear more about from our students, outlining IFSW's position on any matter, are excellent method of conveying information, as they can be used for multiple audiences. The statements explicitly contain information highlighting the social work perspective on an issue. Keeping the IFSW members informed of the activities of representatives is key to ensuring member interest. All written statements are approved by the IFSW UN Commissioner and either the President or the Secretary General before the issue. Verbal statements, sometimes we're able to do a verbal version and contribute to discussion and debates of an economic functional commission. Events, representative teams, we might be in a position to run workshops or other events, parallel events to some of the functional commissions. You'll hear more about that in a few minutes. Now all of the teams globally are doing something to celebrate World Social Work Day, which is the third Tuesday of every month. And now in operation, not only in New York, but in Geneva, Vienna, and now Bangkok, Asia Pacific region. Okay. So the vision of IFSW is the social work profession is fulfilling its obligation to its own policies and working strategically with other agendas to realize social justice, human and environmental rights, and the dignity and worth of all. IFSW members work jointly with the UN agencies locally, national, regionally, and globally, bridging engagement between communities' aspirations, the Sustainable Development Goals, and other UN agendas. The strategic positioning of social workers within the communities and the UN can lead to community discussion and action advancing self-led, sustainable social development. I now hand the floor to our stellar interns, and I can't say that enough, Milena DiMaggio and Linda Levin, who will present their experiences, including how they learned about the UN system and the role that civil society plays, highlighting specific tasks and interventions. So here's the fun part.
You're muted, Linda.
Thank you, Dr. Cronin. My name is Linda Levin. I am an advanced standing MSW student at Fordham University in New York City. I am a white Hispanic female with black hair. I'm currently wearing glasses and a pink shirt. And like Dr. Cronin said, I am one of the IFSW student representatives to the United Nations for the New York team.
And hi, everyone. So my name is Milena DiMaggio, and I'm the other student representative for IFSW North American team. And I'm honored to be a part of the People's Global Summit today. So just a little bit about myself. I've received my bachelor's in social work at the University of Las Vegas, Nevada. And currently I'm an advanced standing graduate student at Monmouth University School of Social Work with a concentration in global and community practice, which is only lasting for another week or so as I'm graduating in early May, which is really exciting.
So first, Milena and I would like to thank Dr. Cronin and the whole team for IFSW New York for their leadership and guidance throughout the past year. We are both extremely privileged to have had your support and be able to learn from all of you on the transformative work that is necessary to advance the field, human rights, and support so many advocacy efforts so that we take the right steps toward building a new eco-social world. Being an IFSW student representative to the UN comes with much of the same responsibilities as all of our professors and the other representatives. Our primary purpose is to serve as those coordinators, connecting community goals to the United Nations agenda. As Dr. Cronin mentioned, we highlight the social solutions that can be achieved through applying our profession's principles as methods as the framework for achieving social justice, sustainable, peaceful societies, social transformation for equality, while advocating for human rights. And that is where Milena and I did exactly this year. As students, we have been active on multiple NGO committees, where Milena and I represent IFSW, including the Committee on Migration and their subcommittees on xenophobia. Milena's on children and migration. The Indigenous Peoples Committee, where I'm also part of their health subcommittee. The Committee on Aging and the Committee on Children's Rights. And that's just to name a few. This has been an excellent way to really understand and be part of advocating, networking, and educating ourselves and others on these human rights issues from a local and international level. I know we have both been part of some incredible projects that have worked to advance initiatives both here in the United States and globally around the world. We learned the importance of SDG 17, which is partnerships, and how we built those partnerships and camaraderie with other representatives and NGOs to collaborate on that work. The one major difference as a student representative for IFSW interning at the United Nations is that as an MSW student, when you start your field placement, you normally get a little bit of a learning curve to kind of learn as you go. Well, Milena and I kind of hit the ground running the second our placement began. Almost immediately, we needed to start drafting the IFSW policy statements for the Commission on the Status of Women and the Commission on Social Development. As Dr. Cronin previously mentioned, those are the two functional commissions located at the New York headquarters. And that's where we're providing our expert professional opinion as social workers on how to address that priority theme. I'll kind of go into that. As students, we will get the opportunity to write the rough draft, and then we're given guidance and supervision by the team where there's edits, and then there's more edits. I'm confident that I can speak for Milena and I that we both felt we were good writers before we started this internship, and then these policy statements were unlike any academic writing either of us had ever done. This was a real learning opportunity. We learned how to write with precision and purpose. These policy statements are where we, as social workers, give our expert opinions on developing intervention models for the theme proposed. There was also very tight deadlines to submit our statement to the UN. I think we had about 4 days for the statement on the Commission on the Status of Women. So as an NGO with special consultative status, there's also specific guidelines that we needed to follow. We had a maximum of 1,500 words, and that includes all the titles in the introduction, the citations, which by the way, were not in APA format, and there were also specific rules on what you could even abbreviate. These policy statements are rooted in those current IFSW policies and data, which Dr. Cronin also spoke about, and that strengthens our sustainable solutions that we're going to propose to the UN. So right now I'm going to discuss our statement for the 60th session of the Commission on Social Development, whose primary theme was an inclusive and resilient recovery from COVID-19 for sustainable livelihoods, well-being, and dignity for all, eradicating poverty and hunger in all its forms and dimensions to achieve the 2030 agenda. We developed 6 recommendations, which included waiving COVID-19 vaccine intellectual property rights, which would allow the Global South access and create an equitable vaccine distribution. And we also urged governments to advance food sovereignty for the recovery of all natural resources and sustainable livelihoods. So food sovereignty was actually a new concept that Milena and I learned this year that really emphasizes the rights of people to healthy and culturally responsive, appropriate food through ecologically sustainable methods. It really recognizes that women, indigenous peoples, and local farmers have respect for the land, water, and that they understand that food is a human right. It shifts that food insecurity through a human right perspective to food sovereignty. So after our statement was edited and it was sent through the whole IFSW team, it was eventually at IFSW, and then it was submitted, it was published at the United Nations. We then were able to utilize our statement to really emphasize our recommendations with a side panel event in February. With guidance from the team and those wonderful partnerships that we had started to develop, we met weekly and found amazing leaders, including our own IFSW Indigenous Global Commissioner, Dr. Hilary Weaver, who discussed transformative social protection systems. We had Dr. Pauline Lucina, who spoke on vaccine equity, and Reverend Dr. Liberato Bautista, who is the president of Congo and the Assistant Secretary General for the United Nations Ministry. And they really made clear the importance of social workers in positions of leadership and on food sovereignty. That was just the first virtual conference that Milena and I really were able to see how developing these sustainable solutions for our policy statement, and then finding these amazing leaders through our partnerships. We're really working towards developing this virtual program was to educate, advocate, and reach people locally, nationally, and internationally so that we can really create the transformative work that as social workers we want to achieve. The team really emphasized the role as connectors and creating partnerships, I think really laid the foundation on giving us the confidence on how we can continue our advocacy work from grassroots to global with all partners of every profession. This social work exemplified a lot of our responsibilities, and we as social workers have for building partnerships, moving into positions on leadership in so many areas to really advocating for social justice and human rights. So then I'm going to say that after we did all of this, we really kind of did it again when we developed the parallel event for the Commission on the Status of Women, where our speakers included founder and director of the IFSW Climate Justice Program, Dr. Meredith Powers, and social workers Jackie Patterson and Violeta Guerrero, who highlighted our recommendations for local and global strategies to mitigate climate change and disaster risk reduction to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. I am so excited and honored that as a representative for IFSW and a social work student, I had these incredible opportunities to learn just how interconnected all of our work is, and shifting that to include Indigenous knowledge, climate change, and the rights of people advocacy locally and internationally. And I'm grateful to our directors and the whole IFSW team for creating that foundation for me as a social worker so early in my career. Because as Milena will continue to share with you, they really emphasized leadership development and allowed us to grow in our own advocacy and professionalism while moving social work as a proactive leading profession forward in so many different ways. So I thank you for letting me join you today, and I'll pass it to my colleague that will continue to share on some of the amazing work we've done this year.
Awesome, thank you. So as Linda went over, advocacy needs to be integrated into social work practice. And as student representatives, we've been consistently learning about different themes of injustices that the functional commissions have been focusing on. We've been able to see great work throughout our time here with the internship and even have been able to be a part of it, some of it, as Linda had shown. We were both so excited to be at the forefront of youth empowerment as student representatives. So finding out that there were youth groups like, for example, the Youth Leaders and Young Professionals for the NGO Committee on the Status of Women was truly inspirational. Myself and Linda were able to explore and find different ways to represent IFSW and ourselves at the same time. So as we continued with this internship, we realized that within our undergrad, a lot of this macro level work was not really taught. There was so much more to learn, but not much available as our universities were very geared towards clinical and micro settings. It was really difficult to find a field placement that focused on macro work as an undergrad, or to even find classes that really taught about it. So with this graduate level internship, it really opened our eyes to see how diverse the social work profession can be and how much change can actually be created. So one of our duties as student representatives that we were told early on about was co-facilitating, organizing, and hosting the virtual Global Student Conference that coincided with annual Social Work Day at the United Nations. To honor and celebrate the social work profession, each year kind of has a special theme, and the three sponsors, which are ICSW, IASSW, and then IFSW, come together to create an advocacy event during the month of social work. So the Global Student Conference is kind of where Linda and I come in. These two events are essentially united as one, and they represent social work in a holistic approach via students and then social work professionals. So the Student Conference allows us as students to take everything that we learned and everything that we've represented and kind of turn it into an advocacy event for social work students specifically. So this year's theme for annual Social Work Day at the UN focused on how social workers have a crucial role in food security. And usually students like to follow the track that this event is on. So there are two goals that come out of this large event that has continued for 38 years. So the first goal of this is to kind of show the United Nations and alike organizations how the social work profession can work towards the United Nations agenda. And then the second goal is to promote and educate others on the social work profession and how it should be at the forefront of human rights issues. So Linda and I decided to kind of think outside of the box as we truly wanted to capture what we've been learning about this entire year. What I'm going to share before that was the flyer was the Social Work Day. It kind of just showcased their themes and speakers on food security. We didn't end up going with this theme and instead focused on patterns as we thought intersected and needed more advocacy. So one of the patterns that we did notice consistently throughout each committee event we attended was the inclusion of indigenous peoples and their knowledge. So this was an entirely kind of new pathway for myself, and I think for Linda as well, as I didn't really have any type of education or experience with this type of population. Learning about various concepts, sustainable solutions, and the history of indigenous peoples' knowledge was something I myself wanted to start advocating for. So then we started to learn about the People's Global Summit, which was coming up in June, July, and now we're here. We were looking at the 4 steering principles that drive this summit, specifically focusing on Buen Vivir. Buen Vivir is an indigenous social movement from South America that describes a way of life and form of development that sees social, cultural, environmental, and economic issues working together and in balance, not separately. Buen Vivir focuses on the love and care of people on the planet, understanding that they go hand in hand with one another. You can't really create solutions for one and not the other, and not impact the other. Another pattern that we've seen throughout our internship was how detrimental climate change has been affecting all populations worldwide, intersecting each and every type of injustice. We believe that Buen Vivir perfectly captured this intersectionality instead of separating that social workers should be focusing on one or the other. So this particular pillar of the summit did stand out to us. And as the social work profession advocates in an intersectional and holistic approach for both people and the planet. And so we did use this indigenous social movement as our theme for the Global Student Conference, as it perfectly tied together everything we wanted to touch upon. We titled it Buen Vivir, Co-Building an Eco-Social World for People and the Planet. So the Global Student Conference started around 10 years ago, as opposed to the 38 years ago of this annual Social Work Day. So essentially, this is an opportunity for students to advocate what they're passionate about, and is typically done in person. For us, we were conducting this event virtually to stay safe from COVID-19. A main goal of ours with this event was to advocate the social work profession on a macro level to social work students worldwide. An important piece of this was to break down the silos of micro to macro social work and to create a truly holistic approach for advocacy through all levels. We wanted to show that there are a lot of amazing opportunities out there for students and youth, and that they have the power to start now. So to start off, we did have Rosemary Barbera, a macro social worker and a professor who had expertise on the theme of Buen Vivir. She kind of highlighted the indigenous movement and how social workers should be incorporating this into their profession. We then had President Mitt Joyner of NASW and IFSW North America as our keynote speaker, where she really empowered and excited students for advocacy. As you can see on the screen, kind of on, I think it's on your right-hand side, it's a little picture of our team, and you can kind of see everyone there in the little corners. We took a picture really quick. And then I also have on the screen our flyer that we created that we're highlighting our speakers and advocates. And I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of our youth advocates that we had. So another goal of ours was to make this event as interactive and as engaging as possible, as we didn't want to kind of make it feel like it was an average lecture class. So what we did was we created breakout rooms, we created Google Jam boards, and we even hosted a round of Kahoot, which is a competitive game-based platform. Right there on the screen, you can kind of see our top 3 winners that were participating in the event. And then we had 3 student advocates speak. So one was to represent the people, one was to represent the planet, and then one to kind of showcase the intersectionality of both. So we had Carmel Albishi, she's a UNICEF USA student advocate that spoke about her work serving marginalized communities, specifically with migrant and displaced children. We then had Emmanuel Ashinta, who is from Indonesia, and she is an indigenous youth environmentalist that spoke on her work on deforestation, climate change, and disaster preparedness. And then last but not least, we did have Claire Cremando, a student intern with Peace Boat US, when she spoke about her work that revolved around peace, nuclear disarmament, and sustainability for the environment. So behind the scenes, I think me and Linda were a bit nervous as we did try to plan everything out to the exact second. We were really worried about timing, but the converse ended up going perfectly. We had students reach out to us telling us how engaging and educational the experiences were for them. And we realized Buen Vivir had really impacted the audience, as we had around 250 people register for the event. It was a really educational experience for us as well. We not only facilitated an international virtual event, but also conducted international outreach as well. You can again see our team there and our volunteers as well that helped us make this conference as engaging as possible. We learned and connected with so many young people working on so many solutions for our future. It was one of the most motivational opportunities I had been given, and we reached the goals that we did want to achieve. As an IFSW student representative, I am thankful, honored, and privileged for the diverse educational experiences I've been given, and just to be here today to speak on behalf of the work I've been a part of. I hope to continue working on my advocacy skills with the time I've left with this internship, which I know is not much, but still. And I know it will lead me to other wonderful experiences in the near future.
Thank you, Linda and Milena. And thank you for letting us speak to you today and share how social work profession is active to prevent and solve structural social problems on local, national, regional, and global levels. So you can see Buen Vivir in action. Thank you very much. And you see our contact information. Feel free to contact any or all of us. We're always happy to talk about IFSW and any of the issues that we've been talking about today. Thank you.
Thank you.